any candidates with us tonight, please come forward. If you are on Zoom, please raise your hand.
Real tiny, right? Okay, right. Perfect. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Darshana Patel. I am a candidate for California State Assembly District 76. I've been here a couple times before, so I won't give my whole bio. But for those of you who don't know, I am a research scientist by training. I have a PhD in biophysics, worked in the life sciences industry for a while. I am raising 3 daughters in this beautiful state of California and thinking a lot about their future. I'm also a current trustee in the Poway Unified School District, serving in my 2nd term. I have some exciting announcements to give. I did earn the endorsement of the California Democratic Legislative Women's Caucus, and that was a big endorsement for me. I'm very excited to earn their endorsement. One thing that we're struggling with still in this state of California that seems to be so progressive is that we still don't have parity with women's representation in our state legislature. And that's a real challenge when we're talking about solving some of these generational challenges, like the pay equity gap, like affordable childcare, women's reproductive rights, right? Some of these enduring challenges we now have to face over again. I think having more women in the seat bring a different kind of perspective and a different level of experience to our state legislature and the ways we build policies. So I'm very excited to earn their endorsement and have their support in this race. I've also been endorsed by the California Federation of Teachers, that's new since I was last year, as well as the California Nurses Association. So I've got a lot of good, solid labor support backing me in the areas that I'm specifically interested in tackling, which is our fully funding public education, making sure we have healthcare access and improvement to quality of healthcare. One of the reasons why I jumped into this race is because my father did pass away while we were waiting for a prior authorization on Medicare. And so finding ways to improve access to healthcare is a huge priority of mine. If you would like to learn more about me or join my campaign, make a contribution, you could visit www.patelforassembly.com. I'd love to earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any candidates on Zoom?
Right. Hi, Kathy. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nadia Farjud, and I'm running for the Grossmont Healthcare District Zone 3. I'm running because I have the experience, the compassion, and the commitment to build a healthier East County. I've previously shared my background as a healthcare lawyer, my commitment to supporting union healthcare workers, especially those at the Sharp Grossmont Hospital, and also updates on our strong campaign, including endorsements from Monica Montgomery Stupp, who is well on her way to becoming a county supervisor on a majority women board, which is historic for San Diego County, and Senate President Pro Tem Tony Atkins, along with all 3 Democratic council members from the La Mesa City Council. But tonight I wanted to talk a little bit more about my background in serving women particularly, which is really the core and heart of this club. I believe that electing women can change the world, and I have a track record of supporting women over the course of my entire career since I was a teenager. In college, I worked on Elizabeth Warren's U.S. Senate campaign, and my senior thesis was on women's pathways to the U.S. Senate. My first job out of college was working at Political Parity, which is a nonprofit organization that worked to mobilize, equip, and embolden women all across the country with a focus on women of color, encouraging them to run for office, which is a lifelong mission near and dear to my heart. Here in San Diego, I'm proud to serve on the San Diego County Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, where we're hard at work putting together a Know Your Rights symposium, which will happen in March in honor of Women's History Month. And I've been working for over 15 years to elect pro-choice Democratic women, including now as a board member of California Women's List. I'd be honored to have this club's support in this race. And if you'd like to learn any more about my campaign, you can do so at nadiafarjud.com. I'm excited to report that we're at nearly $50,000 raised in this race, which is more than any candidate has ever. And I'm really, really in particular excited about getting young women mobilized to participate. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Nadia. All right. The next candidate we have on Zoom is Dr. Brenda Miller.
Hello. How's everyone?
1 second, Dr. Miller. All
Okay.
right, there you go.
Okay, there we go. Hi there. How's everyone? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hello, I'm Brenda Miller. I'm a registered nurse of over 40 years. I completed my doctorate in nursing, and I'm Dr. Brenda Miller, running for the Grossmont Healthcare District Board of Directors, Zone 3. I'm from Kansas. I live in San Diego County and La Mesa, bought a home in 2016. I'm an educator and a clinical administrator, hospital supervisor. I'm running for this board as a clinician and an educator because the American Nursing Association says a nurse leader must be at the table where healthcare decisions are made. Nurses are at the bedside doing direct patient care in the hospitals and in the community, providing high quality care, low cost care to patients. We are in the community educating on primary, secondary, and tertiary care to patients, family, and communities at large. We meet the patients where they live, whether they're homeless, whether they're in a very rich community. The Institution of Medicine says that the future of nursing is to focus on health equity. We're to focus on social factors. We're to focus on economic factors. We're to focus on healthcare factors. And the way to do that is to make sure that you have nurse leaders such as myself at the board making those decisions, making sure that we are addressing all walks of life, that we are helping the community at large. This is a district that's over 750 square miles, and we need to impact the district. And with me being on the board, I can do that and be a voice for the community. Thank you for listening. My name is Dr. Brenda Miller, and I'm a candidate for Grossmont Healthcare District, Zone 3. And I would love your support and endorsement. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have another candidate on Zoom? Any other candidates in the room? Susan, you're running for something.
No.
Pardon me?
I'd like to speak for a candidate.
Oh, sure, come on up.
Um,
Definitely.
Give me time to go.
okay, I'm going to speak for a candidate who's not here. Her name is Christine Brady. She's running for Chula Vista, City Council, District 4. And I think she's a candidate we have not had a lot of time to get to know. John, are you prepared to run the video? Let's try it, because I don't think we know who she is. She's a graduate of Stanford, Princeton, and she has developed a school in a very impoverished and poor area in Tijuana. She's been the director for 35 years, and she has brought in world famous artists such as Jim Hubble to actually build this school from the ground up. And if John can show the video, I found a video today, which I think is illuminary, very illuminary, illustrious for us to actually, she's a very, she has no ego, and she does not understand the political process. But I think she would be a candidate that we really need to get to know. So if John can cue this, can you play this video? It's in Spanish, but it doesn't take very long. And it really gives you a flavor of the school that she has developed. It's a world famous school. And I was just talking to her, listening to her describe the school. And I said, do you by any chance happen to know Jim Hubble? And she said, yeah, he's the one that built the school that I brought in to build the school. And a lot of us do not know who Jim Hubble is. He is, he lives out in Santa Isabel. He has a very sustainable, if you're an environmentalist or you're into art, you know who Jim Hubble is. He's so world famous. He did 18 doors for the Sultan of Dubai. I mean, he's but anyway, John.
Improvisation method, just give me 1 second.
Yeah, well, anyway, my name is Christine Brady, I'm sorry, Brady, Christine Brady. And I think that she's really someone that we should get to know before we endorse in this race for tomorrow for D4 Chula Vista.
Yeah, we can add a link into them. Maybe we can tag it on the announcements. All right. Sure, it's very short.
Very short.
Yeah.
Colegio La Esperanza, una escuela preescolar y primaria con un campus extraordinario, un programa artístico increíble y clases para el desarrollo del niño como computación y nutriecología. Contáctenos hoy para más información e inscríbanse ya.
So that's an example of the school.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay.
All right, any more candidates in the house? All right, Lori, well done.
Good evening. I know I've mentioned in the past about the importance of people running for Central Committee. Under the state election code, the Central Committee members are the people who make decisions about endorsements and the process of how county Democratic Party governance is organized. I'm serving on the Central Committee. I was elected in 2020. I'm going to be running again in 2024. I think it is important that we get strong progressive voices and we get more women serving on Central Committee. So I wanted to encourage anyone who is interested to consider doing that. It's organized by assembly districts. So this area is in 78. You all know probably what assembly districts you're in, but it really is important that we get a broad diversity of voices on the Central Committee. So I want to encourage those of you, it doesn't cost anything. You only have to collect a very few Democrats, signatures from Democrats, and that the timeline for beginning that will start in December. You can pull, or no, I'm sorry, November. Thank you. So you can pull the papers from the Registrar of Voters, begin collecting signatures, and then your name is on the ballot in 2020, which will be a big election year. There's a lot of things going on in a presidential. Did I say 2020? 2024.
It's hindsight.
I hadn't really planned to speak tonight, so thank you for correcting my errors. So yes, 2024 primary in March. So I want to encourage more people to think about doing that. That's where we, and as an elected member, you can propose resolutions like the one that came forward recently, calling on elected officials just to denounce campaign materials that are racist and derogatory. And that's more important than ever. If anyone listened today to the city council meeting, it was really horrible and organized, and people calling in, expressing bigotry, anti-Semitism, racism, and insults to elected officials. So we need more people to push back in an organized way. So I really encourage people to consider signing into the for Central Committee in 2024.
Thank you, Lori. All right, do we have any elected officials or their representatives? All right, Doug.
Thank you. I'm Doug Case. I am the Political Affairs Director for State Senate President Pro Tem Tony Atkins. And the legislature completed their session last Thursday at midnight. And they got through over 700 bills between Monday and Thursday. 4 of the bills are bills that the senator sponsored. And I mentioned them before, but I want to mention them briefly. One is SB 385, which will allow nurse practitioners to, physician assistants to perform a first trimester abortions after they receive the training that's specified in the bill, and that has been signed by the governor. Another bill that's been signed by the governor is SB 447, which replaces the current travel ban on states, the 26 states that have anti-LGBTQ policies, and replaces it with a marketing campaign that's aimed at red states to try to change the hearts and minds of the residents of those states. That's also been signed by the governor. 2 bills awaiting the governor's signature, and he has until October the 14th to sign bills, is SB 519, which is a bill that deals with jails. It requires in custody death investigation reports to be public record through PRAs, and establishes at the state level a director of oversight of in custody death investigations, and then requires the sheriff to respond to the report within 90 days. And then finally is SB 487, which is a bill that would protect health service providers who perform abortion care or gender affirming care in other states, who may face sanctions in those states, to protect them from having any sanctions in the state of California. And so it's pretty good. And so those are the 4 bills that she passed. And
What was the last one? The number?
last one is SB 487. So thank you.
Thank you, Doug. All right.
Very impressive. Hi, everyone. I'm Shayna Hazen, Vice President of the San Diego Unified School Board. Don't want to say too much because I know my colleague, Trustee Whitehurst-Payne, is going to be on your panel sharing a lot about the work we're doing. It's great to be with you in person for the first time. I was elected to the board last December, and I've been working hard with my colleagues to make sure that we are improving outcomes for students, and with not just thinking about academic outcomes, but also about social emotional outcomes, things like restorative practices and restorative discipline, to make sure our kids can thrive in the classroom and outside of the classroom. But again, don't want to say too much because I know Ms. Sharon will be sharing more. Good to see everybody.
Thank you. All right, we are running a little ahead of schedule, but that's fantastic. We are going to go ahead. There are no more electeds. Right. Okay, we're going to go ahead with our school board panel. I'm going to introduce the one of our e-board. We've got Ann Crosbie. She's our director of communication, and she is going to moderate our panel this evening. And I'm going to let Ann introduce herself and then our panelists.
Hold on down, our panelists. This is going to be great. I'm super excited to be here doing this with you all. My name is Ann Crosbie, and I have served as chair of the Children's Caucus for the California Democratic Party, but I've also had the opportunity to serve as a school board trustee and a community college trustee, and I'm very passionate about education, and I'm super excited for that reason that we have such a dynamic group of educators and education advocates with us this evening on our panel. First of all, we have from San Diego Unified School District, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne. So glad to have you here. We have the Honorable Bishop here from Chula Vista Elementary School District. And we have Dr. Darshana Patel from Poway Unified School District. So over the weekend, I had the opportunity to have a conversation, and we talked about a lot of different topics. I'm going to go ahead and ask questions of our panelists, and then we will have time for questions. I'm not going to ask them to necessarily respond to every question, but based on what we've already talked about, maybe have them expand on some of the things that I found really fascinating that they had to share. So I'd like to start with a question for Dr. Patel. Poway is a pre-K through 12 unified school district with 42 schools, more than 35,000 students, and a budget just over $500 million. Why did you decide to run for school board?
Well, it certainly wasn't, in my grand design of what I thought I would be doing in life. But what happened was when we moved to San Diego 13 years ago, I took a step back away from my career as a biophysicist working in the life sciences. And I got involved in the community doing various things, planning board, PTA, town council, etc. And then what happened was our superintendent was embezzling money. So that's really the nugget of it. Yeah, and as someone who really wanted to put roots in my community and care for my community, ultimately the community asked me to run for office based on my years of experience serving in civic spaces. And it was that the superintendent was being put on leave, and there would be an opportunity for several new board members to come in and find that perfect superintendent for our community. That's what inspired me to run.
Now, having been from a different area of California, Poway got very famous, and they also got famous for making a lot of quick corrections, and I think that's Dr. Patel was part of that, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Dr. Whitehurst-Payne, skip over to you. Serving in San Diego Unified School District, as I said before, the second largest pre-K through 12 unified school district in California, with 176 schools, 120,000 students, and a budget of over $2 billion. When we think of school boards, we tend to think of them as being small elected offices. This is not a small elected office when you have a budget that large that you're responsible for overseeing. When you were first seated on the school board, what did you find most surprising?
Well, I had the advantage of having spent 31 years in the district as an employee. I started teaching in this district all the way from the East Coast and went through the ranks and then retired. And so I knew the district more or less. But I think the most surprising thing was the complexity of the issues. I'd only dealt with one phase of it, of the district. You know, I was in HR, I was in program evaluation, and of course teaching. And I really got my feet wet when I became a board member, because to see, as you said, the entire budget, to go into details, and to be fully responsible as a group with 5 members for the instruction, the well-being of the 100,000+. And just a clarification, that number she gave includes the charter schools, because we actually have to give them their charters through the district. So we've got about 25,000 students who are under our supervision in that sense, because we can approve or disapprove their charter. They have to go elsewhere, we just. So for me, it was most surprising that the budget was so large, and trying to get a handle on it to figure out how could we really focus on helping the children on that wide scale. So I felt like I was constantly running to catch up with myself. I was out 7:24, and I don't understand how other people who weren't retired, Shane, I don't know how you could do it, but I've already been to 30+ schools this year, and we've only been in session about 4 weeks. But that's my commitment, to get out there, find out what's going on, and try to make a difference in every child's life. So
Thank you so much. So each of these districts have 5 trustees. So that's pretty significant responsibility for a trustee for a district that's as large as yours. And when we see the groups who are trying to put people on school board with just one topic that they're passionate about, they're not taking into consideration the significant responsibility that our trustees hold. So thank you so much for the work you're all doing. Trustee Bishop. Serves on Chula Vista Elementary School District, as I said before, the largest elementary only district in California, TK through 6, 49 elementary schools, 30,000 students, and a budget of over $400 million. Were you interested in politics before you ran for school board?
I was a costume designer. Actually, my care for education goes back to my birth, basically. My mother was a teacher. I grew up in schools, playing with the cutter, going to union events, following along with educational issues as a kid. But it really hit home for me when I was 14. My parents got a divorce. I was my mom's kind of right hand. We were always together. And she had gone back to school to become an administrator. And her school that she was the vice principal of had gotten an amazing grant from the federal government to do wraparound services at their school. And they got the grant. It was a great amount of money. They were going to have a social worker at the school that could help people before anyone had a computer in their home. This is 1991. And so we all went to the school board meeting to watch them rubber stamp the money. Anybody that knows Vista Unified in 1991 knows that it had been taken over by the religious right. And we went to the meeting, and one of the members of that group pulled it from the consent calendar, and they voted against the money and said that people should pull themselves up by their bootstraps or go to their local churches for help if they're poor. And so I saw, for the first time in my entire life, I saw how much of an impact a school board could have on a community. And for the next several years, I went to every single school board meeting with my mom. I was that nerdy kid that wanted to be the student representative. I ran for student representative, but I lost to the guy that had the NBA Jams game at his booth at the convention. But I'm not still upset about that. We're fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. No, but in 2016, I was just working in theater and happy and supporting Hillary Clinton, and then Trump won. And I think for a lot of us, that was a wake-up call, and we all felt very helpless. And I said, I don't want to feel this helpless. What can I do in my community to try and make an impact? And I went back to my roots and I said, I'm already on the council of PTAs. I'm very involved in the district. Let's do this. And so I got involved for the not political side of it, but just to serve, to up my service and try and make a difference in my community. That
absolutely answers the question. And so I think this is unlike when I think frequently when people run for other offices. Frequently, the trustees who, the individuals who decide to run for school board come from the schools and see something wrong and want to try to improve it. They may know absolutely nothing about politics and what it takes to get elected. So it's really important that we are supportive of them to help them with what they need. I will say all of these trustees served during the COVID pandemic, and having also served during the outbreak, we owe them a debt of gratitude for the work that they've done. It was extremely challenging, and the amount of work I'm sure you put in to benefit your students and protect your staff and teachers, we owe you a debt. I wanted to ask Dr. Patel, since the pandemic, we know that there have been significant learning loss for students, and there's been a lot of discussion about that. But what is the impact to your staff and to the leadership and the teachers, and how has that impacted hiring?
Yeah, so we definitely saw through the COVID pandemic, we were in Poway Unified, we worked very closely with our staff to do whatever we could to get our kids back into campus as soon as possible, because we saw significant challenges within our community with kids. We saw on Zoom that there were kids zooming in from their bedroom closets. And these, you think Poway Unified is this middle class school district. We don't have those kinds of situations. But it revealed a lot of the gaps that we had never seen before, that people work very hard to hide when they're in a middle class community. So we knew that there were kids at home that weren't actually safe at home. They were safer at school, away from home. We saw situations where kids had significant disabilities. They were on IEPs and they weren't having their service needs met by being at home. So we really wanted to work very hard to get them back to school. So we worked with our staff to do that. They were doing simultaneous concurrent instruction. That was very challenging. They were good sports about it, but it was a very significant change in their work culture. And what we saw coming out of COVID, we saw a lot of teachers wanting to retire early. They didn't feel safe coming back. They weren't comfortable with that technology. We saw a lot of turnover. There were laws in place where we keep putting our retired teachers back when they were ready to come back so soon. Right? There's a waiting period that they have to go through in order to come back. And then just the challenges also with leadership. We saw a huge turnover in our principal positions. And individuals that we thought would move on from principal to director positions that were in that pipeline towards promotion, they decided to take a step back. And they didn't want to be in those leadership roles. They didn't want to make those calls on when we would come to campus, when, whether we were going to wait the full waiting period for COVID, whether we were going to follow the CDC's recommendations in the California Department of Public Health, or whether they were going to try to fight against it. There were schools that were fighting against it. You can remember, it wasn't that long ago. And so what we saw was a significant turnover in our staff at every level, including our bus drivers, including our food and nutrition staff, including our custodial staff. There's a huge level of responsibility in our custodial staff to clean after every single day, to make sure all of those desks were wiped down, to make sure all those doorknobs were wiped down, all the doors were not wiped down. It's a lot of work. And so we have not recovered from that workforce shortage. And it's not just that the work changed, but also you pile on top of that, the cost of living, inflation, all of that has just gone up, and it's harder and harder to recruit into public education. It's a real challenge. And I think the system is asking for some significant change. And if we don't deliver it, we're going to see public education get attacked from different sides, not just the culture war side, but just the understaffing is going to be significantly problematic.
So when you have you're in your district level positions, if you have a budget that is 400, 500, 2 billion, you need to have important financial individuals in business services making sure that money is being spent wisely. And they have opportunities in they don't have to be in schools, right? They can go into business, they can go other places. And we had the school board meetings where we had parents screaming that they wanted schools open. Understandably, they were concerned about their students learning well, but those kind of additional impacts has made it very difficult to hire. Did you want to add something?
I just wanted to jump in and say,
yes, please.
Not only that, but as we, as much as all of us, I'm sure, support workers getting paid a living wage, the new fast food $20 minimum wage is really impacting our districts because our food workers in our districts don't have that amount. So a person making $17.50 in our kitchen could go to any fast food kitchen and get a $2.50 raise. And that's on the horizon for us as well, just as something that we're having to work with
In all of our
yeah.
And I just would like to say, because you are middle class, our dilemma as a district at San Diego Unified is that we cover the spectrum from La Jolla, the top of the SES, all the way down to folks who are doubling up, tripling up in their homes. So the decisions that we made, we were trying to keep folks safe. We were trying to keep them alive. And when you have someone who is dropping dead in bacteria from COVID versus people saying, oh, we don't know anybody who has COVID, you have to think about life and death, literally. And so we opted to go out. I think San Diego Unified and LA Unified went out the same day. We thought we'd be out for a couple of weeks. And as we all know, it turned into years, literally. So,
2020 hindsight, right?
yes, and we knew that we had to provide food for our students because that was an issue. So we were dealing on a day-to-day basis initially to try to figure out what is this, how do we deal with it, how do we meet all the needs, and we wound up bringing back special education students and those who really were in a high-risk area. But I mean, we were lambasted at the end for not bringing everybody back sooner, but it was not play. It was real. We knew about real deaths that had occurred as a result of this on the body.
Right, and I think that you make a really good point. One of the things our schools, many people don't realize, our schools are those emergency centers. So if they're, say, you're in an area that there's an earthquake, because of the requirements for building code for school buildings, they're some of the safest places to be. And so often the response to emergency situations falls on schools. Luckily, this time, some of the money followed that, and you were able to feed immediately, your students who are at risk. Others, businesses, other parts of the community can wait to respond. The schools had to respond immediately, or there were kids that were not going to be fed.
Right.
So we were able to put in place some of those meals immediately, which was so important. And I know for us, when we had meetings with the local health department, we were told, well, could be this, we don't know, good luck. I'm not a health worker. I don't know how to handle this, but we needed to be making the decisions and making them quickly in the students' best interest. So again, thank you for that work. My next question, sorry, find my place. As the longest serving trustee on the panel, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne on here. What would you want a candidate for school board to know? What would you want them to understand?
Well, that's a very good question, because the first thing I think that anybody who's going into this workforce school board, you have to really have that passion for children. That's number one. You have to have that compassion. I always think about in closed session, and Sharon will bear witness to this. Cody, our male, I squeal on him all the time. He cries more in the meetings about what's going on with the children. So you have to have that. And then on the other side of the coin, you need to understand that, yes, we are dealing with a $2 billion operating budget. And we have another, at least $1 billion that we're working with for our building, our construction. We're spending between $1 and $2 million a day on construction. But we had now I think it's up to 10, $11 billion bonds over the last few years, and we're spending money. So there's the oversight of that and ensuring that things are smoothly working there. And that's an experience that you normally don't get. You need to understand the fundamentals, at least, of the budget. And then later on, I think Sheena's had to figure out about, well, we get our monies later, but we get monies first from, we have to get loans in order to tide us over until the county gives us the money and the state determines how much they collected, on and on and on. So dealing with the fiscal piece, which is a major part of our responsibility, it's a really big issue. So you need someone who has the ability to at least think on that level from a fundamental perspective. And of course, hiring the superintendent is another major issue.
One of the things when you talk about the financial piece, so if you are going to be one of those people that is going to be a firebrand in the community and not have a good understanding of the budgeting, you will be in a situation where your bond rating can fall and all of those school bond dollars will not go as far. Then you lose the commitment of the community because they see you as misspending the money. So these jobs are super important to make sure that our education system can do as much as possible with as little as possible, because we're underfunded always.
Can I add? Yeah, yes, can I add a little bit to that? I would add that as a member of a school board, we make a collective decision.
Yes.
So if you come in all prickly hot, wanting to change one particular item with a lot of passion, but you don't have the capacity to persuade your colleagues that this is a priority in public, because we can't do these discussions in private because of the Rona, you're not going to get your agenda passed. So a lot of this is making sure that you know how to work well with your colleagues who might have a different political persuasion or a different understanding or priority. And our only employee is the superintendent, and we jointly manage the superintendent. And that is also something I really would love people to actually understand. It's not as straightforward as people think it is. So you can't walk onto a school site and tell the principal that they're doing something wrong. That is not in your purview. You can't unilaterally decide some curriculum is not appropriate for the students in your district, in your trustee area even. So it's that collaborative approach. You have to be able to work well with your colleagues to get any work done. On a 5-member board, that's being able to count to 3. And if you can't count to 3, this is going to be a real problem for you going forward. And then the other thing is that the budget piece, I think, is also very tricky because we have to put forward our budgets before the governor signs the budget. And I think that, so when people come in, they think, oh, well, we'll just run the school district like a business. School districts don't run like a business. And I think that's a common misconception that community members think that, well, they'll just come in and outsource everything, that we hired an opponent who wanted to outsource everything and balance the budget that way. You just can't do that.
Hey, you could talk a little bit about restricted dollars and there's that piece.
So one of the things that surprised me the most when I got into my school board position was this idea between restricted and unrestricted dollars. So we have this very large budget, but our actual money that the school board gets to decide on how it's spent is just a very small portion of that, right? People say, you got, $500 million. What are you doing with that money? And I'm like, well, 300 million of that is not touchable by us. So that's a really interesting thing to kind of come up against and realize that, all of these things have these little tags on them and they have to be spent in a certain way. And so the money that we actually get to work with is a much smaller percentage than people understand.
And that isn't decided by us, right? As school board trustees.
And just one caveat, and that is, it's very difficult for non-educators to understand that there's something called the education code, which drives the bus for us. On March 15th, that's a deadline where you have to lay folks off. If you're going to do it, at least send them a notice that you're going to lay them off, and folks think, oh, you're overstaffed, then we'll just lay people off in May or whatever with no notice. No, we're governed by a code that then impacts the budget, because if you don't give a notice by March 15th, you just block folks' service for the next year. And most of our budgets are people. So it's very difficult for folks to understand that. Right. Yeah, we don't make anything, right? We're not a factory that makes widgets, right? So most of the money that we get is going into salaries. And so when we're talking about not having money next year, that really does, as Sharon said, means that we're having to look at letting people go. And that's the worst thing that you have to do as a school board member, is the potential to let people go, or even to let people know that they're on the bubble. That's really awful.
So we're going to take a little bit of time and allow people to ask questions either here or on Zoom for our trustees. And then we're going to actually come back and wrap up anything that you didn't get to say that you think people should know. So if there's anyone who has a question, if you want to go ahead and ask your question, I'm going to repeat it with the microphone if that works.
So, back on to what you just said, and kind of also looking at, I believe you're all schools are funded based on how many kids we have enrollment, right?
Almost. Funding is based on average daily attendance, so it's not just enrollment, it's if you are in that seat.
Yes. Attendance appears to be a problem.
Yes.
So therefore we're losing funding. And then the other part of that is, like you said, so let's say you get $100 million out of the $400 million that you can direct. Do you have, is there, I guess, is there ways to, we don't answer when we're spending that same money, but still getting that salaries.
So the question was about how schools are funded, and yes, it's about students, but it's also about average daily attendance dollars. So when students don't show up, even though they are recorded as a student in a district, we may not receive the funds that go with that student. The question being, is there a way to reimagine how you're spending those dollars, staying within the people person business, right? Is that adequate?
I think that's it.
Okay, good.
I can say that a lot of school districts want to end the practice of average daily attendance, and switch over to a enrollment-based model because, you know, going through COVID, we all understand that trying to incentivize bringing sick children to school is not tenable, right? And also, depending on how much, how wealthy the school is, can really have a huge impact on how kids can make it to school. A lot of parents can't get their kids to school, just can't do it. And those are the schools that need the money the most, right? There's definitely a movement to switch over to enrollment based, because also, if Johnny is not in that seat, the lights are still going to be on, and that teacher is still in that room, and all the other things that support that classroom still have to exist, right? So yes, there's a movement. We're all all three of us are delegates for California School Board Association, and we're trying to push in that direction as well.
Go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the point. During the pandemic, they did use the enrollment. They held us harmless, is what we say. And so that's ending. And we've been lobbying and pushing to continue with that practice, because the notion of daily attendance means that you have to have seats in the chair, right? Bottoms in the seat. But if that child is sick, that's a disincentive. You do not want that child there because of COVID. So that's why we're forcing the issue. It's more advantageous to us to not have a child come sick just to get the ATA, the average daily attendance. So that's one way we're trying to address that now, is we're constantly lobbying for things.
So when we look at our budgets, like Kate was saying, a large portion, 85 to 90% in best practice goes towards staffing, right? Staffing, benefits, all of that. And then the rest of it, there's a lot of overhead in there as well, right? Our electricity, water, etc. And so that actually leaves very, very little to play with.
Hi, how are you?
It's also negotiated. You know, that comes under things that are negotiated in contracts. What level of professional growth you're going to offer for your staff members and things like that. But going back to the enrollment question, we also don't get funded for our school buses at any significant amount. It's gone up very recently, so we appreciate the state legislature for bringing it up to a 60% reimbursement rate for our mandated transportation. But when we talk about enrollment-based funding versus ADA, we don't have any control over our children getting to school, and yet we're held accountable for whether they're there or not, right? And I think that's a very important gap in the way we fund public education. We can't help our families get the kids to school, but we take the penalty if they're not there. So yeah, but the challenge is that Prop 98 is considered a floor and not a ceiling, and we need those funds.
The community schools that we are trying to implement to get at that question that you asked. We'd like to do community schools and have schools to redesign, reconfigure as you're asking. So yeah.
I also wanted to point out that not just transportation funding that is grossly underfunded, but special ed is a huge part of our budget, but we get maybe 12% if we're lucky is funded. And so much of our general funds do have to go to cover the special ed that we owe those children this education. And we are responsible for paying for all of the things that are needed to support each and every special ed child. However, we are not given that extra cash for it, so it often pulls from the general fund. And especially after COVID, there's a huge uptick in behavioral issues, and people are, I mean, for good
we are finally taking time to recognize mental health needs of students, and we are diagnosing kids with things that they've struggled with that you might not have noticed unless they were sitting in that room with their parents and their parent watched them interact with their classroom on the computer and go, I see finally what they've intimated at parent-teacher conferences previously. So we are identifying the needs of the kids, but again, with less and less money, we're paying more and more in special ed services.
So also with bus drivers, you're competing with where they also might be able to drive public transportation and not just drive in the morning at the end of school and maybe the odd field trip. So there's significant competition there. I would like to go to Zoom and see if we have any questions there.
Nadia.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. So I was listening to KPBS the other week, and I heard that Trustee Bishop was quoted in this article, and I'm reading from it now. It says, Chula Vista Elementary School Board Trustee Kate Bishop said she faces a spike in threats, some sexually violent, when she pushes for inclusivity of LGBTQ plus children and closing the achievement gap between Black and white students. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more, and this is for anybody on the panel, just some of the experiences with hostility you've faced from the public and what groups like this and community members can do to support you all in the work that you're doing in the face of a lot of the national and discourse coming out of Florida against a lot of the values that the Democratic Party holds dear.
Thank you. I'm gonna let Kate respond to that, and then actually our other trustees as well, because I think we're both faced.
Thank you for your question. I appreciate the concern. It's tough because I'm in two places. Especially as the president for the San Diego Democratic Education Alliance, one of our major concerns is trying to get people to run for school board. And I'm coaching people and trying to encourage people to run and be putting themselves in this space. And then at the same time, when I step out and do things that are progressive for my board, there's oftentimes very real backlash from community members, especially right-wing people who their entire goal is to make me shut my mouth, like shut your bitch mouth. And there's a lot of sexism, a lot of fat phobia, a lot of different things that are kind of thrown my way anytime I kind of step outside what they want for students, especially when I try and support LGBTQ students. I'm not saying that this is going to happen to everybody that steps up. I just have a very big mouth and I like to push the envelope sometimes in my district. And I know that's not like, oh, it's my fault. But the situation that we live in right now is fraught because this is the new line in the sand between Democrats and right-wing Republicans. They are coming for our kids, and that's not an exaggeration. They want to dismantle public education. That is the end goal, full stop. This is what they're trying to do. And they do it in any way that they can. So for them, when they come at me personally, of course it's going to have a visceral impact on me at first. And then I step back out of myself and I go, it's working. You know, they wouldn't come for me if they didn't worry about the things that I was doing and that I was being, that I was able to push for these values. So as I'm talking to people stepping up into elected office, especially school boards right now, you know, it's not for the weak at heart. You have to have a very thick skin. And you have to be ready for them to come at you in these very, very ugly ways at times, because that's all they got
Yeah,
That's all I got.
That's a really good reason for the community to come out and really back. And I know Kate's going to be talking about that more in a little bit. How important it is to have people speak up and speak out, because the people who are the loudest generally are not even from our community. They come from outside the community. They have never had children in our schools, and they're here to tell all the parents who are in the community how they need to raise their children. And yet they have no actual vested interest in the school district at all. Darshana, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll just add that in Poway Unified during the peak of the pandemic, we were hybrid virtual, right? So the board was there and the boardroom in person, and that so the staff could help us, live stream our meetings, and we can get support from staff in real time. But the members of the public were still zooming in for their public comments and attending the meeting. And it was during one of those meetings where we actually had protesters kind of push their way into the boardroom, attempt to take over the dais. They used their constitutionalist member to remove us from office in this fake process. They installed themselves in as the board members using a Nazi salute. They followed it up with an oath of office that they filed, notarized with the clerk of the county. They came to our superintendent and demanded we turn over all personnel records to them, and then sent over fake process servers, impersonating a process server, to our homes to sue us for $1.7 billion each personally for violating the Geneva Convention. It sounds really, really ridiculous, but it created so much fear and anxiety amongst our staff members, because while this whole takeover action was happening in our boardroom, they were looking at our staff members' badges. They were looking them up on LinkedIn. They were looking up their Facebook pages, seeing how many children they have. They knew what neighborhoods they were living in. Our chief communication officer, they actually called out her street name. They looked that up in real time. They said, we know where you live. We're going to come find you. Our staff members really, really struggled with coming back to in-person meetings. And so our job as school board trustees was to make sure that we could balance this needing to have a meeting in the public, because we have to conduct our meeting in public, but still protecting our staff, knowing that these protesters could really get out of hand. So there are these really genuinely difficult moments, but we need good people to run for office. So if you're one of these people, steel yourself, right? And do what's right for children and for the people that are providing education for our children in the community in a way that makes them feel welcome in the schools, in a way that helps them optimize their learning, that they can have this brighter future. We are the champions for public education. We're holding the front lines on that, but we can't do it alone. We need public members of the public, like what Kate's doing with the Democratic Education Alliance, getting community members to show up at school board meetings to counter those culture war narratives. We need members of the public to do that. We need members of the public to step up and run for office when we see members of the Awakened Church wanting to come in and take over the school board seats. We all know what that's like. It's horrifying. Sharon?
My experience is that we, San Diego Unified, we've been a forerunner for a long time, because ever since I've been on the board, been threatened about something. The sex education program, we don't like this curriculum, on and on and on. In fact, during the pandemic, the school police, we have our own police force, they actually called and wanted to know, are you feeling safe because somebody's giving us a threat and you're at home? And we kind of laughed about it. My husband said, let them come on, my neighbors will be fine. But I mean, it was at that level where they wanted to send out police officers to really monitor what was going on, but I was fine with it. Like, don't intimidate me.
Yeah, and that kind of stealth and steel heart and commitment to our schools. If you, we also have now Moms for Liberty, who's been a hate group that has been identified as a hate group that is now partnering with the Republican Party to try to take over our school districts. The trustees in the state of California, that is the largest elected body in the state. There are more school board trustees than city councils or any other elected office. So that's a lot of places that they can impact our communities and try to take over. So that's where they're going to try to take over the state of California in partnership with the Republican Party. Okay, so we're going to take 2 more questions, one more on Zoom and then one here in. So go ahead, Brenda.
Dr. Miller. Hello. Thank you so much. You hear me?
Yes.
The internet is unstable. Oh,
I can
can you
hear
hear
you.
me?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. I'm just getting a message saying my internet was unstable. Being an educator at Cal State San Marcos, we had such a challenge getting our students to return back to campus. And you might have answered this because I was trying to listen and, sometimes your brain drifts. But, during COVID, for the K through 9, you heard about students being lost, students not being in the address the school had, and finding students were at other locations. What was the percentage of your students returning? Were you able to have most of the students return back to school?
We're going to have Dr. Patel. You want to start with that?
So prior to COVID, we were close to 37,000 students in our school district. We're now just hovering around 35,000. So we have lost a significant number of students, and our attendance rate has also dropped significantly. So we're seeing, I think what parents are seeing in our district, and maybe different than Chula Vista and San Diego Unified, we've seen a significant drop, and it's more around privilege. We're trying to get a better understanding around it, but what parents are seeing is that their kids can miss a day of school. Maybe they will go to Disneyland, and that's okay, because they saw that, oh, their kids are going to do that anyway. They did it during COVID, and they were, okay. So it's more of that. It's turning out to be a little optional. That's what we're seeing a lot of in Poway Unified. It's that privilege piece coming in, where they're having a less of a attached relationship with daily public education. We're also seeing the other side of it. We have an increased number of housing unstable youth, and we have a hard time sometimes tracking where they are. They're sleeping in their cars. We have about 300 students that are identified as youth in transition in Poway Unified, and sometimes we have trouble tracking them and their attendance. And so there's a few different things that are causing it, but we do see anecdotally parents just thinking that school's a little optional, especially in those lower grades. And that's really troubling as well. An unintended consequence out of COVID.
So in terms of percentages, well, let me just start by saying this. Our district touches the border. So we are kind of a binational district in a lot of ways. We have a lot of students that cross the border to come to our schools in the morning. And during COVID, obviously, they were unable to do so. And many of our students were taking advantage of the fact that we had a virtual school still. But due to some decisions that I don't necessarily agree with, our virtual school was taken down to a very, very small handful of students, and it was based on medical needs. So a lot of those students were unable to return to school still. We happen to be lucky in Chula Vista. We're one of the fastest growing cities in the country still. So we dropped from nearly 30,000 students, and we dropped a couple thousand down, but we've been climbing again just because there's so much building happening. In fact, we opened a new school in 2022, and we're opening another school next July, which is named Justice Sonia Sotomayor Elementary. We're really proud of But yeah, we're climbing back up. But we did lose a significant portion, and previously, as was mentioned before, we had about 96% attendance rate, and it's dropped down to the low 90s, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in terms of fiscal response, that is a big impact on us, millions of dollars.
We were at approximately 97,000 and pre COVID, and now we're down to about 95,000. Our rate has dropped a little this year, so it's not as high as it was. But we also have brought in the TKs, the 4-year-olds. We've now decided that we are investing early, even though we have to pick up the cost to meet the cost as a district. Because we take any 4-year-old, and the state has specified that they have to be certain before they begin. So our enrollment, in fact, that was top of the board discussion. She was very passionate about that. Why are we not doing something to get kids? And I think we have to look at the larger community. What's happening with housing? I happen to be from District E, and for the schools with the lowest, the highest homelessness, my schools. So that's a big issue, because if you have 2 or 3 families in one home, that impacts learning and participation and so forth. Yes, she's
one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much from all 3 of you for giving us the perspective of what you've been dealing with. Thank you. Thank you for the work you put in and the thick skins and all of it. I did, as a consumer of public education, with my children and now my grandchildren. I've been in a consumer in the San Diego Public School District, San Diego Unified School District, for about 3 or 4 decades now. And I've watched this is kind of off what we've been talking about, but the GATE program, Gifted and Talented Education, evolved, but always struggled with the same issues. How do we meet certain special needs of kids, but also keep some of the privilege of that edge of that program available to all who might benefit from it? Do we dismantle that program? Do we change its structure somehow? Because it historically has been an excellent program, but always open to very vehement criticism. And I just wonder, particularly Dr. Payne Whitehurst, if you could just comment on that struggle a bit. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, because that's something I'm sure Shayna's wrestling with in her mind right now. But the issue really is about the strategies that were used to teach children. Some of those strategies should be used with all children. So you're right, it was kind of a privileged thing, but those same strategies, as a former Cal-State San Marcos instructor for student teachers, teacher interns, I supervise student teachers, and the methodology, we're trying to deploy those strategies for all children. And so that it's not just one group. So within a classroom, we call it the universal lesson plan design, which means that you have some strategies to work with the GATE children, you have some to deal with the special education children, and then you have some to deal with the basic needs. That teacher is trained to meet those needs. As a former teacher over at Mission Day High School, I can remember GATE children sitting outside while the others went to class, but they were working on a project. Why don't we have all children working on a project to go to City Hall and lobby for something or whatever it is? So that we haven't done away with it in that sense. We're just deploying those strategies so that more children can benefit them.
Thank you.
And those strategies, right, they lift all boats, right? Everyone benefits from those improved instructional practices.
Is it okay to add to that?
Sure.
Great, thanks. My mom was a GATE coordinator when I was growing up, and I was used as an example for gifted underachievers. So showed you. No, just kidding. I'm actually the GATE coordinator at my daughter's school at this point, because I was sitting in this school meetings, and because of how it was worked out, GATE would always be on the agenda, and I go, what do we do with GATE this month? Oh, nothing. No teachers want to take it on because it's all this extra work and there's not enough money and no stipend for it and whatnot. And so I ended up taking it over so that we could have a program, because I actually do believe that gifted education is special education. And the other end of the bell curve. So I think it is important to create opportunities for enrichment for those students, because those are the ones that you lose. Those are the ones that feel like education isn't for them because it doesn't challenge them. It doesn't reach them where they are. So yeah, I do an after school program in order to try and do it. But I totally hear what you're saying in terms of this, how we identify kids that need that program. We went straight from, because I was concerned about that too, we went straight from the standard Ravens to identifier. You get a certain percentage on this IQ test and then your gate. We moved from that to having the teachers who interact with these kids, who see these kids that need extra enrichment, they are part of. So the Ravens 2 is the base, and then the teachers recommend the rest of the students for that program, because it really is important to make sure that those gifted underachievers want to come to school, because those are the kids that we lose really early on.
Do you want to have stay because they're being challenged, and that includes their gifted in talents in arts and music, right? And so
I'll just add a couple points to that. So for the gate test, what we noticed in Poway Unified is that children were being prepped to take the gate test. And so if you can be prepped to pass a gate test, then you could access that gate learning, right? It's not something that's inherent to your character. You can be coached into it. So when the funding for gate started dwindling, because we don't get funding for gate, Poway Unified is a base funded district, so we don't get a lot of supplemental and concentration funding, nor are we one of the wealthier districts that has that is self-funded. So we basically only get the base level of funding. So we decided we weren't going to have gate, because what was happening is schools that the foundation could fundraise for that, they were having their kids able to provide gate level instruction, but other schools that their foundation couldn't fundraise for that. They were just in a lower income community. We have 5 Title I schools in Poway Unified, so there is a lot of that huge range. We have a school that can fundraise like $300,000 in an email ask, and then we have schools that can barely pull in $10,000 with an email ask. So what we're doing instead is more of this approach of all kids. The teaching and learning is designed such that all kids can access that kind of differentiated learning. And there is UDL, Universal Design for Learning, we bring into all of our schools so that they can access it. Of course, that's an ideal, right? It's not perfect. It's not a perfect system. We have some teachers that are really good at differentiated learning and some teachers that just don't. And so there's still a lot of room for improvement. We wish we could do better. We're thankful that our schools have lots of enrichment programs, right? We're thankful that there's Science Olympiad and, coding clubs and all these different things kids can do after school. But we still worry about what about the kid that doesn't have access to that after school program. So there's still a lot of area for improvement. We're not doing that.
So this is going to be our wrap up. And so what I'd like to ask each of you in about 2 minutes apiece. What I found surprising in having this conversation, when I first ran for school board, I was not successful. I didn't win my first election, and that was true for 2 other of the trustees who were on the panel. One of them was actually successful in their first race. And the reason is because I failed, maybe you feel differently, but there's so much to learn about running for office. And so I would like to ask you each, as you wrap up, give us a couple of minutes on what this audience can do to help people who are running for school board to be successful the first time, because as we mentioned earlier, with our school districts being under attack, we want to make sure that good people get elected.
And I'm up first, I guess. Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for this opportunity to share with you this evening, and I am running again this year, so that's on that. But I think the biggest piece is that folks need to understand the political process. I too was in math and education and never thought of I didn't take one political science class in my life and knew nothing about the actual process. So it would be good for folks to understand, to know, to get involved in going to clubs, to start following what's happening politically. And then to start learning about the school district at the same time, what education is all about. And I think for you all, as you look out and look at potential candidates, just kind of get them involved in what politics is all about. Because from the outside, you can look at it one way, but when you get involved, people say, yes, you are a politician, even though we think of ourselves as educators, I think more so than politicians. But you have to get to know that process. First time around, it wasn't successful, and it was a good experience. That's when I went to the university and learned a lot more things about education. And then I came on board, and I've really been passionate. I'm thankful that Sheena and her colleague, our colleague, they've taken on the administration, because I am very interested in my district right now and making a difference. I happen to serve the community that needs the most, as I said, with the homeless population and the greatest educational needs in the district. And so I've been very passionate about things that I can do now that I don't have to run the meetings and deal with all this crazy stuff. So it means I devote my attention to solely what can I do to help my children, my students. So thank you.
So as a first-time candidate, I think the things that I had as an advantage in my back pocket is I was involved in the Central Committee. I was a member of Democratic clubs, and I was on civic boards before I ran for office. What I think a lot of people don't realize is people that have a direct nexus towards school are not necessarily the majority of your voter population. So you have to find ways to connect with community members above and beyond being involved in the school district. So I was on our community planning board and our town council, and that gave me a lot of exposure to, other not school adjacent members of our community. So I helped with land use issues. People knew that I had that capacity to work with them. I was on the town council putting on community events, looking for volunteers and coordinating volunteers. So I had this other type of experience, and I think that was helpful. I think one of the hardest parts was the whole FPPC, filing all the documents, and becoming recruiting my husband to be my treasurer. I think if we had better support on that logistical paperwork side, that's kind of intimidating for a lot of people running at the small grassroots level, whether it's a school board or a water board or a hospital board. That process of it, we're not fundraising enough to hire this high-powered staff, a consultant necessarily. Some people do fundraise enough to have a consultant, but a lot of school board members don't. Their districts are small. They're not even approaching $10,000 of fundraising. How are you going to hire a consultant to help you with this? So I think understanding and having a support network of that process is also helpful. And then what I would recommend for people interested in school board is, for a year before you run for office, attend school board meetings. See what that cycle looks like. See what that budget cycle looks like. See what the community input cycle looks like when it comes to building your local controlled accountability plan. See what the cycle looks like for when budgets are adopted, right? These are all cycles that you'll see in a full year. And you'll get to also understand how Robert's Rules works, how the board meeting's conducted. All of that will help you understand if this is really what you're signing up for. Because a lot of it is very routine and prescribed, and it has to be that way because we follow certain processes. And then there's this great resource online that I used when I was in PTA legislation and advocacy chair. It's called Ed 100. They have this, it's basically like an online textbook for you to understand how public education works in California. It's a really great resource. It's bite-sized chunks. They have everything from how the local control funding formula works, which is how we're funded for public education, to how bonds work, to how negotiations work. And it's an independent resource from CSBA, which is the dominant voice in school board guidance and leadership. It just gives you an alternative perspective that will help you understand how public education works in California.
What's it called again?
Ed 100. Yeah, and they work closely with PTAs too, so they're a non-partisan, non-profit organization, really fact-based. They're not trying to persuade you to go in one direction or another, which is nice. It's just a neutral source that's out there and available for you to reference.
I definitely second the Ed 100. It's an incredibly useful resource. So I do want to say that if you're talking to somebody who's thinking about running, if you're running yourself, you don't, if you haven't gone to a year's worth of board meetings, that's okay too.
Yes.
You can access those online. Those are recorded. So go back and watch some old meetings and catch up on what's going on with your district. So don't be intimidated by that timeline. What I can say about becoming a politician, that's the weirdest thing. I ran for the first time in 2018. The Women's Club was incredibly supportive, and I really appreciate all the people that were there at that time who were really amazing to help me get my feet wet with the political process. It was a whole huge thing because I decided I wanted to run in November 11th, 2016, and I ran in 2018. I spent the first year and a half going to school board meetings, learning about education, like really trying to catch up with what I didn't know about the district. And I totally missed the boat on the political aspect. And so I saw that the Democratic Party, that actually they reached out to me. They're like, oh, we saw that you pulled papers and you're going to run for school board. Did you know that we have this whole, Democratic workshop on how to run for office? I said, great. So it was like March of 2018. And I went in there and it was like drinking from a fire hose. There's just so much information. And basically by the end of it, it was made very clear to me that I was extremely behind the 8 ball at that point. And I didn't know anything what I was doing. I was actually running against a Democrat because I looked at the makeup of the board that I was looking at. We had 2 teachers, 1 classified member, and 2 principals. And I said, well, where's the parent on the board? Like, that's what I see my voice being. So I don't think we need 2 principals speaking on behalf of principals. They get enough support from the superintendent. Let me be the voice of the parents. And so I ran against the principal, who happened to be a very well-respected member of the Democratic Party with lots of support and from labor as well. So like, I got in really deep, really fast. I'm so glad I got my butt kicked because it really gave me an opportunity to learn, to get to know people. And, so much of being a politician is just establishing relationships with people and trying to work together to get things done. And that was a great learning ability for me at that time, so that by the time 2020 came around, people knew me in the Democratic Party enough to go like, well, of course we should put her in. This is, she speaks for education all the time. She won't shut up about it. But I did win in 2020. I'm really grateful for all the people that supported me in that one as well. I will say that I will transition really quick over into what I want to tell folks that are thinking about running is that, yes, it's hard. Yes, there are people coming at you, but if you want to be a warrior for democratic values, there is no better way to do it right now than to be on a school board, because this is where that line is. This right here is the line in the sand. We need you. We need good people running for school boards all over this county. And I put my hat for the San Diego Democratic Education Alliance on again. We are trying to recruit school board members. If there's anybody that that you think might run somewhere in the county, we are trying to support them. We want to help them understand what the process is. So we're actually doing, because the party is continuing to do, hey, here's the process to run for office. But we're going a step further and going, hey, we need to tell you what it's like to be a school board member. We're going to do training for school board candidates on November 4th. There's going to be a candidate training from 11 to 2. It's going to be on Zoom, so that is accessible. But if you know anybody that's thinking about it, that is maybe a first step for them to try and figure out what all of the different moving pieces. So that was my little pitch.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Dr. Spring and Dr. Scott. We're going to hang on to Kate for a minute because she has a presentation about a program called Adopt a District, which kind of dovetails into what we were talking about earlier, about the abuse that school board members take during meetings. Yes. So it's really important, and Kate's going to finish our school board portion up by doing a few minutes on that. Take it away.
Yeah. I get to be a firebrand. Yes. Okay, so you're like, I don't want to run for school board. What does this matter to me? What do I need to do? We need you. We need each person in this room. We need you. And you think I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to you. The school board members that are doing the work in our community are being attacked every school board meeting. Not only are their attack, has the extreme right been trying to get people onto school boards, they've succeeded. They've figured out the model, and they're getting their people on. I am in Chula Vista, and we have had a solidly Democratic school board for quite a while, and now we have an extreme right-wing person on our school board. And she comes to every meeting and does things like pull from consent the training that we do for teachers to support LGBTQ students. She pulled that from our last meeting. She wanted to argue against that. Luckily, we still have 4 Democrats there, right? But we don't have people in the audience. She brings an entourage to every meeting. There are like 10 people, no matter how empty the gallery is. There are 10 people that are friends of hers that stand up and attack us personally, on all the Democrats on the dais. They speak on these agenda items. They attack us and tell us that we're grooming children, because always the grooming children. So they always have something horrific to say, and it can wear a school board down. I'm just giving my board as an example. But it's happening all over the county. And sometimes we know in advance that there's going to be something on an agenda, bless you, that we need voices in that room, because they are very organized. Awaken Church, you guys familiar with Awaken Church? And Revenant, they are getting people on these school boards, and if they're not, they are flooding school board meetings and screaming at people. And it's very hard to convince a community that X is the right thing to do when all these folks are screaming for Y. So what does that mean for you? That means we need your help. So the San Diego Democratic Education Alliance has established a program called Adopt a District. Some of you might have heard of it so far, but this is my pitch for you guys. There are different levels to get involved. Not everybody has time, but if you have time, amazing, you can sign up to adopt your local district. That just means you pay close attention to the agenda items and you know what's coming up, so that you can let us know if there's something on the agenda that's coming up soon that we should organize to have people in that room for, right? So if you feel like you have the time and resources, you can adopt a district, and then very easy reporting form. It's like a Google form, just has a little space where you say what's going on. Okay, I don't feel like I can adopt a district. I don't have that much, well, that's a lot, you guys. I have a full-time job, I have kids, whatever. But I care about these things, and I want to know when there's something coming. Great. Sign up for our action alerts. The people that sign up to adopt a district, they let us know. Everybody that signed up for our action alerts will get an email that says, this is what's happening, this is where to go, this is what to do. You can get involved as little or as much as you can. Sometimes it's as much as like showing up, speaking. Sometimes it's showing up and not speaking. Sometimes it's just writing a letter to the board sometimes it's just posting about it on your social media. Every level of involvement is appreciated and every level makes a difference. So this is me trying to say, please, 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 sign up for our Adopt a District program. You can access it on our demedalliance.org. Demed Alliance, DEMEDALLIANCE.
We will send a link in our follow-up.
Love that. But yes, anyway, we would really appreciate your joining our ranks to really mobilize to support our school board members because they need the support. Sometimes it makes a huge difference just visually to see people not screaming at you, but supporting your values, because we all need to support democratic values, and this is the place to do it. So thank you so much for all of your time tonight. I really appreciate it. And we really want to work together with the Women's Club more in the Education Alliance, because it's something that we all care about, I think. So thanks for the time.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Kate. It's really wonderful to have a program like that. And then follow it up with an action item. I really appreciate that. So we will definitely send that link out in the email that comes out the next day or two. All righty. We are finished with our school board portion of the evening, and we're going to go on to Mary Petrowski, and she is going to talk all about the Go Team.
Oh, good evening. Thank you for your attention. My name is Mary Petrowski. My name is Mary Petrowski, and I'm the regional coordinator for the Go Team. I'm 6 regional coordinators. For those of you who don't know, the Go Team is the grassroots organizing team. The Go Team is the voter outreach program of the San Diego County Democratic Party. Show of hands, how many of you are Go Team members? How many of you belong to the Go Team? Thank you. How many of you have done canvassing before? Show of hands. Great. Knocking on doors, talking to voters. How about phone banking? Have you done phone banking? Great. What about text banking? Anyone done text banking? Wow. Wow. Thank you so much. You guys are volunteering and you're helping democracy work. Thank you. I'm impressed by the number of people who know how to do all those great things. The Go Team is a little different than doing voter outreach for a candidate or for a proposition. Go Team volunteers talk to voters in their own neighborhoods, election cycle after election cycle. So you get to know the Democrat-friendly people in your neighborhood, and they come to trust you for voting information. I've been canvassing my neighborhood since 2008. I have voters in my area who won't vote until I come by with the voter guide, which lists the endorsed candidates from the Democratic Party. And they will not vote until I stop by. They wait for me because this is important to them. Why is it so important? Well, a lot of people don't really get themselves involved in politics. They don't follow the news that much. So when they vote, they just vote for like the president or the governor and maybe a US Senate race. Maybe there's a proposition that's been all over the television, so they vote on that. And then that's it. They don't vote down ballot like some of the wonderful public servants we had speaking earlier today. People who run for school board or hospital board or fire safety district. Those down ballot races, they don't have a D or an R by the candidate's name, and voters just don't know what to do. Even judges, they're very, very important, but people don't know what to do, so they just don't vote because they don't want to screw it up and vote for the wrong one. So the voter guide from the Democratic Party helps these voters have a better idea that, hey, maybe if I voted for that candidate, that would be a good idea. So canvassing for the Go Team increases down ballot voting. And the reason that is important is, I think it also was mentioned in the panel, these people who are on our school boards and healthcare boards and fire safety districts, this is our candidate pipeline. We need good candidates getting into the political process so that we have great candidates running for president of the United States and governor and city council and mayor. Go Team volunteers, they reach out to a targeted list of Democrats and Democrat-leaning voters. So frequently you get the question, well, how many voters do I have to contact? As many as you want, you decide. It's up to you. And the volunteers, they contact voters by knocking on doors, have face-to-face conversations. Some volunteers canvass with a partner. I have a lot of people on the team who are husband and wife. And one of them might be Go Team trained, the other one isn't. They just walk together because it's just more fun to have a partner with you. In other cases, both people are Go Team trained, and they just alternate, you know, when someone answers the door, who's going to speak. I also have just friends who are partners, and one takes the odd side of the street, the other takes the even side of the street. So some people like to canvass with a partner, and some people prefer not to. But everyone has their own way, and whatever way works for you is best. Go Team volunteers also contact voters by calling them or texting them. We want to make this work for you. So what works in your lifestyle? I also get a question, when do Go Team volunteers contact voters? Whenever is convenient for the volunteer. Weekends, weekdays, weeknights. If you have a few hours in the 30 days before an election, so I'm talking about February of 2024 and October of 2024. If you have a few hours during that month, that's all you need. That's more than enough to help out. It could be a weekend, weeknight, weekday, whatever you have. It's useful, and we need you. Volunteers do receive training materials and support to ensure their success. I thought you said bottom. Here we go. You're right. Okay. So the Go Team organization, Go Team is an all volunteer organization. San Diego County is divided into 6 Go Team regions. You can see them in different colors up there: North Coastal, North Inland, East, South, Central West, and Central Core. Each region is divided into communities. There's about 10 communities in each region. Each region has a coordinator, and each community has a coordinator. The community coordinator recruits, trains, and supports neighborhood leaders. The neighborhood leaders are the foundation of the Go Team. These people are the lifeblood of the organization. They are doing the voter outreach. I'm a regional coordinator. I've been a community coordinator since 2012 and a neighborhood leader since 2008. If you live in Central Core region, I'll be your community coordinator. If you don't live in Central Core, I'm happy to support you in any way. And so this is showing San Diego County registered voters by party. All the data that I am presenting is from the November 2022 election. You can see that Democrats dominate the county. And then dividing this up by Go Team region, and again by party, the blue bars are the Democrats, the orange bars are the Republicans. You can see that on the far left, in the Central Core region, we have way more Democrats than Republicans. On the far right, on the South region, we have way more Democrats than Republicans. And so there's lots of voters out there waiting for us to visit them. Looking at voter turnout by region, the gray bar shows the number of voters who did not vote, registered voters who did not vote in November 2022. So, I mean, obviously it varies from region to region, but basically 40 to 60% of registered Democrats did vote in the November 2022 election. We want to increase that number. So how do we do that?
Get Trump on the ballot.
Well, Go Team volunteers contact a targeted list of voters. About 80% of registered Democrats are targeted. Why don't we reach out to every Democrat? Because we have data to let us know that about 20% of people who are registered Democrats either will not vote or will not vote with us. And we don't want to waste your time making you knock on doors and talk to people who aren't going to vote or won't vote with us anyway.
Who's not voting with us as a Democrat?
Just because you're registered Democrat doesn't mean that you would vote that way. A lot of people registered one way at some point in their life and just never changed it. Okay, so this slide is showing that go-to voter contact increases voter turnout. The turnout of non-contacted target Dems was 63%. But if a go-team volunteer knocked on their door, nobody answered. So the go-team volunteer just left the voter guide. Voter turnout increased to 72%. That's a 9% increase in voter turnout just because a volunteer left a voter guide. If the volunteer had an opportunity to have a conversation with the voter, then voter turnout increased to 84%. So we're talking about a 21% increase in voter turnout from Go-Team outreach. So we know that that this works. And just to give you an idea about the Go-Team volunteers, specifically the neighborhood leaders, because as I said, the entire Go-Team is a volunteer organization. Everyone is a volunteer. But the neighborhood leaders are the ones who are doing the canvassing. We have in the November 2022 election, there were about 600 neighborhood leaders. You can see there's a lot in North Coastal, North Inland, and we need more in those other areas to catch up. So 600 might seem like a lot of neighborhood leaders, and we're doing a lot of good work with that. But most targeted Democrats in San Diego County are not contacted by a Go-Team member. In fact, 94% of targeted Democrats are not contacted because we just do not have enough volunteers. So the Go-Team needs you. Training materials and support are provided to ensure your success. The time commitment is generally 4 to 8 hours during that 30 days before the election. Most people take 50 to 100 doors. Some people take 200. But as I said, however much time you can spare, we're happy to have you on board. Go-Team training sessions for new members begin this Thursday, September 21st. Attending that training does not obligate you to join the Go-Team, but I hope you will. Feel free to take a photograph of this, this slide. My contact information is there. You can use that QR code to sign up for the training sessions. You can also go to the San Diego County Democratic Party website. And I have lots of flyers with my contact information and the QR code. I hope you all take a flyer. There's some at the front table there. I have some up here. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Question?
Yeah, where's the training?
Where is the training is the question.
Right now, I think there are 5 or 6 trainings scheduled. All but one are on Zoom. They're approximately an hour to an hour and a half long. So there is one in-person training that will be at party headquarters. At San Diego County Democratic Party headquarters. If you go to San Diego County Democratic Party website, you will see on the homepage, just scroll down a little tiny bit and it'll say join our voter contact team. And then it has another button you can click to choose a date that you would want to sign up for a training.
And Hannah will have that information in the minutes as well. We'll go out in the next couple of days. Thank you so much, Mary. I appreciate you.
Hey, Kathy? Kathy?
Angela? Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thanks. I just wondered if there's going to be, I know during the special, Mary, you had said that there wasn't going to be any Go Team action. I wondered if this runoff with Monica Montgomery Stepp, if there might be Go Team action because people are going to start voting on October 9th and the election, the last day to vote is November 7th.
Michelle, I'm not aware that the Go Team will be involved in that.
All right, we will just have to step it up and do it ourselves. Kate has a question?
Yeah, I can use my indoor voice. Okay. Oh, sorry. Is there any involvement from here out for Tana Rodarte, who's her election ends on Wednesday? Is the Go Team involved there?
Actually, it ends tomorrow, Tuesday.
Tomorrow. Thank you, Michelle.
The Go Team works on the primary election and the general election. Individual members of the Go Team are generally active and they tend to volunteer to help out on those special elections, like that recall election against the governor, etc. But the Go Team per se is set up to work the primary election and the general. So it's getting out a voter guide with a large number of endorsed candidates versus those special election type things.
Thank you, Mary. All right, we are going to move on to the Democratic Women's Club app, the mobile app that John Laughlin developed for us. And if you have not had an opportunity to download that on your phone, you can take your phone out right now and use the QR code on the agenda. John is going to put the instructions up on the screen. Does anybody need the QR code? Does everybody have an agenda near with them? All right, so the instructions, if you have an Apple, you click on the app that the QR code will bring up, and then you click on the share button, the little arrow pointing up, and then you scroll down, click on add to home screen, and then up in the top corner, you will see add. You click on add, and voila, your Apple device has the mobile app on it for the Democratic Women's Club. If you have an Android, you find the 3 dots at the top, click on that, scroll down to install app, click on that, and then you click install. And is there one step? That's it. So it couldn't be more simple. Go ahead and use that QR code to download the app onto your phone. That app will take you directly to what you see on our website. So you won't have to go to the website, just go to the app. You'll see when our next meeting is. You'll see our minutes from the previous meeting.
Point out how they join on that. Because some people were asking on the app.
Right, how to join.
Yeah.
Johnny, you have that handy? Yeah, when you get onto the app, it connects to the website, which will take you to the membership page. And we're going to start a membership drive in October because if you pay your dues in October, you are paid up through 2024. So next month is an outstanding month to bring a friend and they can join and get a few extra months included in their membership. All right, so moving on from the mobile app, any questions on that? All right, we're good. Okay, we're going to get through some business quickly. The next thing on the agenda is the nominating committee. We are coming up on officer elections in February. We are going to have one open office, and that is external vice president. So we need to form a nominating committee to look at candidates for that position. We will elect 3 people to be on the nominating committee, and that will be done in the month of October at our regular meeting in October. Let's see, we're lucky to have Beatrice returning as treasurer, And that leaves us with just one office.
Go ahead and put it. Yeah, I don't have a
Dr.
myself around. Thank you very much.
Tiffany Boyd Hodgson is not returning as external VP, so that is the office we will be looking to fill. All right. We also need to fill an endorsement committee. It's extremely important for us to find somebody who would like to chair and some folks that would like to be on the endorsement committee. We're looking at 2024 being an election year, and we currently do not have a group that is spearheading the endorsement procedure. So that is crucial. If you would like to do it, or you know someone would like to do it, or you want to talk to other club members who might like to do it, it is something that we need to be looking at sooner rather than later. So give that some thought, because endorsements are a huge part of our club, have been, and we're going to hear from Yvonne.
So I will be on the committee. I will not be chair, but I will obviously be there to help the chair and with all the materials that we put together over the last two cycles to make it easier to transition to a new committee. I do think that we need to transition. We don't need to have the same person every year. So I will definitely volunteer to be on the committee and support whoever does chair.
That is huge news, because Yvonne developed most of the endorsement process that we have, and it's excellent. And her being on the committee is a big deal. So thank you so much for that, Yvonne. And now we need to find you a chair. So let's and a team, right? So everybody, let's think about that and think who we might be able to get for a nominating committee and an endorsement committee. Also a candidate for external VP. All right, moving on to any business unfinished or new. Moving on to officer reports. Hold on one second. The people on Zoom can't hear.
The resolution that was introduced at the club last month was approved unanimously by the central committee. So, yes, that's a good thing to hear. That was to call on elected officials, candidates, and others to denounce racist campaign materials.
And it's kind of cool when we see, you know, something about the resolution in the newspaper or hear about it on a podcast to know that we had something to do with that. So, you know, we're grateful to Angela Joseph for authoring that. All right, so we're going to move on to officer reports. We did this, Tiffany, on. All right, so we are going. I have Beatrice's report. Beatrice has the treasurer report. We have $4,183.02 on account, and that is Beatrice's treasurer report. Hannah, do you have a report? Pat?
Yes, I'd like to introduce three new members who are here today. I'd like to introduce three new members who are here today. We have Hope Harris, who is fresh from Atlanta and looking forward to getting involved. We also have David Milroy and Indrino. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Yes. Okay, maybe you could pronounce his name for me? Banerjee. Okay, and David Milroy. I think they work with you, Dr. Patel? Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Will you please stand up? Maybe so we know. Okay, thank you.
All right, welcome to our new members, of course, to our returning members. We currently have 122 members in the club, so that's great. Anne, did you have a report? Elise Pipkin-Allen, is she on the call? She's dropped off. Angela. Yvonne? All right. So let me see. Susan has she has some postcards to talk about as we move on to announcements. As Susan's walking up here, I want to recognize Susan and John and Hannah for their technological abilities and making our episodes very well. And I'll turn it over to Susan for her announcement.
Okay, before I start on the postcards, I just want to circle back to the special election of San Diego County Board of Supervisors, District 4. A very diverse group of women from the Women's Club, from BAR, from other groups are planning a combined combine forces for a fundraiser for Monica. And the date is right now somewhere between October the 7th and 8th. So it's in the planning stages, and we will definitely keep you informed. And we will also keep you informed about walks and other opportunities that you can do to support Monica's campaign. All right. Now, when we were at the club summit, Kathy and I happened to meet some young people who were with the grassroots. It's a grassroots group doing postcards, and we have postcards. I have the addresses. This is a very simple thing. We've got the script. We've got the addresses. We've already got the postcards already wrapped up. And this is to California 45, and she's a Republican Congressman, Michelle Steele. John, can you bring up the map? And this is what the specific note on that you will be writing says. Dear whoever, your Republican Congresswoman, Michelle Steele, recently co-sponsored legislation to ban abortion nationwide. If she wins re-election next year, abortion could become illegal in California. Vote Michelle Steele out of office in 2024 to protect women's rights. And you say, thank you, your first name and a volunteer. And that's all it is. So if you're interested in doing this, and some of them, it's not even, it's maybe, I don't know, 15 names that you would write a post that you would write to. So it's a simple thing to do. Who wants a packet? Thanks, Kate. All right, here, let me give her here's her list. Who else? Oh, okay, Ann. Hannah. Who else? It's very simple. Anybody on Zoom? This is 45, so you can see it's Orange County. Thanks, Sam. It's kind of fun. It's easy to do. It's easy to zip out. Anyone else? Okay. I have a question. And the instructions, the FAQ, everything is on there. Oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah, you have to provide the right scan. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. Stephen, I have a quick question. Are all of these names on here, English is the primary language?
As far as I know.
Okay. Just making sure because I have a variety of different.
Okay, great. Oh, God. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay, thank you.
All right. Susan.
Got a good idea.
Susan.
That's Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask two things. One is how many are in the packet? Because I
25.
could ask Kate 25. Yes. Kate, would you be willing to drop some off to me?
Sure. Susan, Kate's going to take the last packet to Michelle.
Okay, we have one more packet, then we have a list for. So I will ask them for another list, for another group, and then John will be right.
All right. Well, that's an interesting
Kathy,
idea. We saw
Kathy,
how we done then.
Kathy, one more quick thing. So what congressional, can you just give me the quick info, the congressional district, what number is it and who is the candidate running against Michelle Steele?
CA 45, and they
Thank
don't
you.
know the Democrat's name.
Okay.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, we are still on announcements. If anybody has any announcements for the good of the cause. Seeing no further announcements, we have reached the end of our agenda.
Kathy, I would say if anybody is interested in walking for Monica or phone banking, I've got access to a universal phone bank. And I'm very grateful that Susan and John always step up to the plate. They're doing another awesome fundraiser. If anyone else is interested in a meet and greet, I've got a friend of mine doing a meet and greet at his mobile home park in Spring Valley. So any of these things, please put my phone number in the chat and please contact me. And I can get your own precinct list to you or whatever other area would be convenient for you. But a lot of people are really having fun with it. Indra Neal is one of them, actually, to just have the opportunity to meet your neighbors. Thanks.
All right, we will make sure that your phone number gets out for supporting Monica. Thank you so much. And seeing no further announcements, we have reached the end of our agenda and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Sunday.